Hey guys, this is going to be a video about characterization. So broadly speaking, a technique to try to put in words, to put into words a very distinct or individual character of a person, a thing, or a place. And there's lots of different ways to think about characterization. You think about characterization, maybe not as the first thing in public speaking. Why would we start with characterization? It seems like a literary technique or something like that. But since we often do start with introducing ourselves in various settings, we can think about the rhetorical goal of characterization as an integral part of a good introduction. But it might be for all sorts of other uses. So in this demonstration of some of the techniques, I'm going to kind of try to show you how I might think through my process of doing it. And I'll use both people and places to think about characterization. So these are techniques for invention. That's to be highlighted first. Techniques for invention, meaning this isn't necessarily a technique for what you should say. The invention process happens prior to speaking. You are going to sit down with paper and pencil. You're going to think about what you want to say, take those, maybe write some sentences out, get some ideas, move them around. You're going to tell us a story, maybe in this case. So you're going to think about what details you want to include, all that kind of stuff that's happening prior to the moment of speaking. So preparing your speech, you could say. How do I come up with what I want to say? How do I do a good job of doing that? That's what invention is all about. So the first thing we want to do is consider our rhetorical goals. We want to think about our audience always. And for the purpose that this video is created for class. So if you're coming to this later and you're not in the class, that's fine. I think it can still be useful too. But this is created for a class in which we're doing an assignment about two different introductions. On the one hand, we're introducing ourselves to people who are potential peers, future friends, we might say. So more horizontal. And what we want to do is simply kind of open ourselves up to people knowing us a little bit better. And we have a short period of time. So we want to speak concisely. You don't want to speak too long. But we also want to let people know something about ourselves that's plausible. If I just say, I'm a really nice person, people are going to say, okay, well, I don't know I don't know what you think that means. First of all, I don't know what nice looks like to you. So you got to show me what that looks like. Don't just tell it to me. But also, it's more plausible if I can see something about you told in a story. Is it possible that you make up a whole story out of whole cloth? Yeah, it is possible. But it gives me a kind of a greater sense of how I should relate to you. If you tell me a story, you let me be the judge of what it means. You don't kind of give me the judgment. So if you say, I'm really nice, you're already telling me that you, the audience, should think I am nice. And that might kind of seem pushy to some audiences even. So what you want to do is kind of tell a story that suggests some of those judgments to people without making those judgments the message to the audience. But in another case, the other introduction, it might be to a boss where you really do know in an interview, you really do need to kind of show that you are fit for the job. But nevertheless, you have in those situations various kinds of constraints on you. So on the one hand, you don't want to be too general or boring. You need to stand out in both cases. You want to kind of show your uniqueness and your individuality. At the same time, you don't want to stand out for a bad reason. But you also want to seem plausible. So you have these various constraints on you that should shape how you think. If you tell a crazy story about what you did on spring break to your boss as the first thing that they know about you when you say, tell me a little bit about yourself, they might kind of be like, oh, I'm not sure that this person is right for the position. Right? I'm going to bold what we're currently working on. So we're still talking about consider your rhetorical goals. I'm not sure this person is right for the position. They don't seem to really understand that this is a professional workplace. They're kind of talking about partying, right? So that would obviously not meet your rhetorical goal there, even if it was a funny story and it met maybe it would be a good one for your friends. So you want to think about all the various constraints. But if I just tell you, well, I was a straight A student, let me tell you about the time I joined the National Honor Society. The person might say, this person's maybe I don't get the human sense of this person. So you have to find something that's both plausible, maybe even a little bit self-effacing while still putting yourself in a good light for this boss. There's some complexity already there just in this small little encounter with an imagined audience, whether it's more horizontal with friends or more vertical with a future boss. So, and we've already touched on this. The next thing we want to think about And there's lots of different ways you could approach this. This is one set of techniques that you might try, is to transform those predicates. So those predicates might be thought of as, in your rhetorical goal, what judgment you want people to come away with. I want them to think that I'm nice, that I'm fun, that I'm exciting. But we don't want those predicates to simply be, again, the message. I don't want to just tell you that I'm fun and I'm exciting and I'm nice. I want you to get there and arrive there yourself. If the audience arrives at that judgment and they feel like they arrived there themselves, they're going to trust that judgment more. And it's going to mean that they believe in your, I guess that's kind of the same idea. They're going to trust that judgment more. Let's just say that. Okay. So we can take some of those predicates. I'm going to, rather than do a person though, I'm going to try to kind of characterize a place. So let's talk about, I've spent some time in Pittsburgh. So I might say Pittsburgh is, and I might begin with just kind of writing down some adjectives. Well, what comes to mind? Smallish, about 300,000 people. Can be kind of dirty sometimes. This can be wild, you know. I'm thinking of things. You don't know what I'm thinking of yet to get all of these things. A place I miss. You know, I have some fond feelings for Pittsburgh. What else could I say about it? It's kind of a working class town, but it's also a high tech industry place. What else could I say? I could say Pittsburgh is a place with good food. Very casual. People don't dress up a whole lot in Pittsburgh, right? So anyway, I could make a long list like this, right? This isn't what I'm going to say in my speech. I'm not going to get up and say Pittsburgh is smallish, dirty, wild, a place I miss, working class town, high tech industry town. But from this big list of predicates that maybe I'm just going to use, you could think about it as brainstorming. From this big list of possible predicates that I could get to, I might want to look for ones that are really seem at odds with each other and try to find a place or story about Pittsburgh that encapsulates that tension, because it's almost always the tension between predicates that is most interesting. So I could take any of these, and then that might stimulate me to think about different predicates, right? So if I thought about dirty as being one, that doesn't seem very nice to Pittsburgh. Well, why is it dirty and a place I miss? What about the dirtiness do I miss? And I might tell you about certain places in Pittsburgh where you go under a bridge and it just seems like it's a half created bridge. They call it the city of bridges. There's lots of bridges there from the old industrial days when they had to take steel out back and forth a lot. So there's all these bridges all over the city. And there are lots of places in Pittsburgh where you go somewhere and it's kind of just like a slab of concrete. There was that meme not so long ago on Twitter where people say, someone says, I know a place, and they take you here, and they put pictures up. And someone did that for Pittsburgh and says, Pittsburghers tell you, I know a place, and they take you here. And it was these kinds of places, these kind of dirty, crumbling, unfinished projects. But it's precisely there that people go and meet one another, and they maybe bring some violins, or they make a fire. And so they're kind of these weird sites where nothing seems like it could possibly happen there, but a little world gets created around these half-broken places. So that's not what I would want to put in my speech. I would want to develop that idea, but I'm like, oh yeah, that might be a kind of thing that characterizes Pittsburgh, both because it's unique, I think, relatively unique to Pittsburgh, but also because it maybe I have transformed my predicates of something where I take a kind of a dirty place and a place that's really kind of something that where I want to be, a place where people kind of come together. So I take things that seem at odds with each other and I put them together. And that really can be what characterizes it for me. And so you can do this with yourself too, right? So you can say, I am, and we did in class a little bit of this, lazy, efficient, mischievous, obedient. These might be just as predicates would seem contradictory. So tell me a story where you're both mischievous and obedient. Tell me a story where you're both lazy and efficient. And that's going to lead to your representative anecdote. So, um, let me tell you one about my grandmother who recently passed. My grandfather loved to tell the story about how they met. And it's a kind of nice little anecdote. An anecdote is a short story that characterizes somebody. So, would fit this assignment pretty well. They were at the pool. They were very young. They were at the local pool. And he saw, as he said, her moon face rise out of the water. And he really wanted to talk to her. So he went up and said, "How's the water?" And she turned around to him and said, "You should know, you're all wet." And kind of lanced him in the minute, right there. Yeah. That anecdote especially worked very well with people who knew my grandmother because she was extraordinarily kind and generous and all those kinds of things. But if you said that about somebody, they were really kind of generous, it would seem banal or obvious, right? So you tell an anecdote that kind of shows a little bit of her sharpness and her wit, and that better characterizes all of those other motives that she may have had. Yeah. So representative anecdote is a story, a short story that captures someone's character and those predicates that are at tension with each other. There's lots of possible variations on this approach, but really what you want to do is avoid cliche. So you could even make that the fourth one. So, 4. Avoid cliche. This is the most important part of what you want to do when you're characterizing someone. If you are talking about your grandmother, you want to say, "Oh, she's old, nice, kind, generous." Everybody's going to say that about their grandmother, right? Well, almost everybody. Yeah. So that doesn't tell you a whole lot about who they are as a person. You want to tell someone that gives you or what you're describing a sense of their distinctive qualities, how unique they are. We want to feel like we know something about them when we're done with your speech. So you have all of these rhetorical constraints that you have to meet. You're going to think about the predicates that you want your audience to take away. And I did mention that when you're talking about the interviewer from the perspective of the interviewer, let's say, and they say, "Tell me a little bit about yourself," you want to draw some of those predicates, maybe not just brainstorming, but really looking on the, let's say, the website. How do they describe their employees? And saying, well, which of those predicates can I use? I'm not going to just say the website says, our employees are always looking for innovation. And you can go into the interview and say, "I'm always looking for innovation." And that's okay. It means you read the website. They know what you're doing. But if you tell a story about how you looked for innovation and maybe also kind of add into that another predicate that shows some complexity to that will make it even more powerful, because not only will it meet your rhetorical goals of giving someone else the chance to come to the judgment that you want them to, but it will also seem more plausible because it won't be so obviously just something that was produced to arrive at that judgment. So the more complexity there is in that story, the more plausible it will be. So it's kind of a reality effect, you could say. So that's really all that I have on this. There's a lot more. I probably could have had some better examples of the predicates and things like that. But if you play around with it, you'll probably get a good idea. You want to just say all those possible judgments someone could make of you, what those might be. How could I combine them in an interesting way? Yeah. And what would be a story from your own life or from your experience that would lead someone to that judgment? All right.